using 2025, and today we want to do a review of 2024. As always, provide our thoughts for the outlook of 2025. And joining me on the set to deep dive into these matters is my fellow analyst Kifmo Maguju. Welcome to the set, Kifmo.
Thank you for having me, Koda.
My pleasure. Well, so just to break the ice, let's start by looking into 2024 and just share our views. So basically, what are your thoughts on maybe the key themes of the investment landscape in 2024?
Okay, well, thank you so much, Koda, for that.
My pleasure.
So, you see, 2024 was quite a year, right?
Sure.
And a lot has happened in 2024. And I think, there was a complex investment environment characterized by macroeconomic instability. And obviously, we talk of high inflation, policy inconsistency, and exchange rate volatility. And that created uncertainty among investors, which resulted in low investor confidence and also led to the dampening of the market.
Interesting, yeah. And basically if you want to zero in on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, where we saw it having two notable bull runs. The first one in the first quarter, right? The quarter ended in March. And that's why we saw the Zimbabwean dollar then reaching a rate of as high as $1 equivalent to around 35,000. And that exacerbated for the replacement of the Zimbabwean dollar with the ZiG. But we also saw it being devalued again in September and then ending the year 2024 in a bear market. So the entire Zimbabwe Stock Exchange was worth around 1.7 billion, despite having peaked 3.2 billion around March and also 4.3 billion around July. But on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, we saw the market cap trends, it was fairly stable. I mean, just your commentary on those figures for 2024 for both our exchanges.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for that. So, you see, the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, it's one of the oldest exchanges in Africa. But if we look at how this bourse has been performing throughout 2024, in my view, it was below expectations. And I think it was particularly exacerbated by what you've just said. High inflation, currency devaluation, and all. So, to a layman investor out there, we might talk of, the currency peaking or the bourse peaking or the currency devaluing and all.
Yeah.
But the layman may have questions like, what does it mean generally? Was the performance good or was the performance bad? Mm-hmm. Generally, it was constrained. The performance of the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange was constrained. A lot of liquidity challenges, trading volumes declining, all such things. So to an average person in the streets, when the stock market is booming, it means that the wealth and the health of the economy is improving, right?
Yeah, sure.
But when it is declining, it's a sign that all is not well in the economy. And in the economy, we're talking of even the middle class and ordinary people who are trying to make ends meet.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. So I think on that, the performance was below expectations, and it gave a negative sign about the economy. So in my view, it was quite below expectations.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Also taking into account that in terms of the investor participation, it was quite minimal. I think for the past years, 5 or so years, whether be it the foreign investor participation or the local investor participation. So now the key question, I suppose, to a layman, like you said, are there any incentives for people to partake in our local capital markets, or to acquire shares, whether be it on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange or on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, taking into account these particular events that are taking place locally. The other way, I'm saying, do you think they are still relevant, our local stock exchanges, for a layman? Let's say somebody who is watching the show and is keen just to understand these things.
Okay, thank you so much, Kudu, on that. So that I think you've asked two critical questions.
Sure.
The first one, you are saying, are there any incentives, right, for local investors? So I think we have to make it clear that at the moment, our local capital markets are mainly dominated by institutional investors.
Sure.
And we have seen like little or minimal participation from foreign investors during the year. So I think the move by the government to reduce capital gains tax is a positive step. And I think it's going to, improve the attractiveness of equity investments among investors. And obviously, that reduction in capital gains tax, it incentivizes, investors, and is likely also to boost trading activity, in our stock exchange. But I don't think it's going to be that rapid. It's going to be a gradual process. And there are also other factors that will also that affects trading activity and retail participation.
True.
Like, for example, we have talked about the economy, and you can agree with me that we have had no IPOs in recent years,
quite some time now,
and it's really worrying because, like, among investors or among the retail investor community, there are a lot of guys who are in their middle ages, like, who wants to create wealth. Mind you, the purpose of the stock market is to allow ordinary men and women to create long-term wealth. Now, at the moment, there are limited capital growth opportunities because we have had no IPOs in quite a long time, and there are only options for capital preservation, limited for capital growth. So that is also another reason why we might see a subdued, market activity as well in 2025. And, we have been observing in 2024 companies, delisting from the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, and others are also delisting from the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. So what it does, it erodes investor confidence. And that really shows that there is a lot that needs to be done by the government and authorities to make sure that our local capital markets become attractive once more. And, according to the Security Exchange Commission of Zimbabwe, retail investor participation, is standing at 2%. And I've been checking that figure. It has been that way since 2012.
Yeah.
So it really is a cause of concern.
Sure.
And obviously, particular attention is also to be paid to, the restrictive listing fees and restrictive economic policies. Because once we address that, it's going to deepen our local capital markets. If we can have more companies listing than delisting, it shows that, the economy is healthy. But at the moment, we are seeing the effects of negative economic growth and bad policies are now, coming down to haunt the stock exchange, particularly the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. So you also talked of, is it still relevant today? Like, participating in local capital markets. The world over, particularly in America, the stock market is a huge thing. Like, there are people who don't even go to work who earn a living by trading
Wall Street.
Yes, and even by investing in securities of listed companies. So in Africa, and particularly in Zimbabwe, the stock market seems like a foreign thing because of the state of the economy. Because like investors care about stable returns, they care about if their investments are safe. So here in Zimbabwe, we are plagued with currency volatility, policy inconsistency. Like in 2024, there was a time when the government issued a statutory instrument to increase the trading cost. It's something that investors worry about. So, and also investing in the local currency, it means when you sell, let's say, a particular share, you also need to come back and exchange that for the hard currency. And in Zimbabwe, that is, you might even see that you haven't even gained anything. So investors care about a stable environment.
Yeah. That's interesting, and I do agree with some of the points that you raised there, especially the aspect of portfolio rebalancing here and again, especially on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, taking into account that there are swings, right, due to liquidity. And I believe very few investors are agile to be tracking the policies that are taking place and their effects on the equities, whether be it on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. They buy. That's why even it's now common and normal for our environment for people to keep cash and to resort to having their cash on the end. I mean, it's say National Mattress Bank, yes, as opposed to investing. But well, like also we do have some, let's acknowledge that we also do have some investors, right, who were there in 2024 and even right now as we're starting 2025, they want to navigate our economic landscape and they are in it for the long haul. Yes. Some, they want, whatever that happens, they just want to know what will be taking place. Some perhaps now just providing our outlook for 2025. What are some of the key considerations that you think our audience might need to take note of, especially in this year 2025, particularly around our local capital markets?
Okay, so there's quite a lot, but I think my starting point is on, as an investor, obviously, before you can try to think that you can trick or beat the market, the first important thing is to invest in, financial knowledge. That's the most important thing, because when you have got enough and adequate financial knowledge, you'll be able to, sometimes do stuff like portfolio rebalancing.
Yeah, sure.
And, come up with, investing and trading strategies that work best for you.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't have that knowledge now, then it's like if you go into the market, then you're shooting in the dark. Mm-hmm. And obviously, it's not going to be friendly to you.
As Warren Buffett says, that risk is doing something that you do not know.
Yes. So I think, if they invest in financial knowledge, then obviously they will be taking like calculated risks. Then I think for foreign investors, foreign investor participation is likely to remain subdued in 2025 because of government policies. Like whether we like it or not, Zimbabwe is a political economy.
Yeah, sure.
So everything is determined by politics. So I think if the authorities really want to boost foreign investor participation, then obviously they need to get the politics and the economics right, because without that we may not have we might not have like a large or an increased foreign investor participation in our local capital markets.
No, that's really fantastic, and that's interesting. So now just rounding up, looking at the asset classes, what's your view on various asset classes? Like obviously we have equities, we have fixed income, real estate, alternative investments, whether it also holding on to actual cash, right? All the asset classes what's your view regarding those different asset classes in 2025, and which ones do you overweight, which ones do you underweight, or do you hold a neutral view?
Okay, so I think real estate remains the best investment for people in Zimbabwe. It provides like inflation hedging and stable income, and obviously agriculture. People can also. I think we've seen that happening in 2024, like people are getting into agricultural projects or trading commodity-based investments. And obviously we're looking at gold. Investing in gold also pays dividends. So we are likely to see that trend happening. And also among retail investors, we are anticipating more people to keep holding on to their cash because they don't really trust the local capital markets. And I think it's because of confidence, right? So it's something that we are likely to anticipate. Then obviously on the Victoria Falls, I think a lot it needs to be done as well, and to increase market activity. Because like if you have been checking the numbers, you can see that their annual turnover and also market capitalization was largely driven by the huge transactions that happened when in Simbisa and in Sco
on the 5th of December 2024.
You see, so we can't have a bounce that is only triggered by only a few counters. We need to have a bounce that anyone can enter and exit at any given time, right? Yeah. So that also makes for the increased breadth and depth of the local market. And obviously to round off like what you said, I think the Security Exchange Commission of Zimbabwe really need to look into private partnerships to drive investor education, like partner with content creators, influencers, and also private companies. That will also go a long way to attract more retail investor participation in market activity.
Interesting. There you have it, right? And I'm sure during the early this year we are anticipating some REITs to be listed on the foreign denominated bourse with the IGU REIT and the Puma REIT in pipeline. Well, we'll see whether that will move the needle in terms of improving the activity on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. Well, dear viewers, that's what we have for you for today. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we do hope that you keep on tuning in as we do record these episodes. If you have got any questions, comments, feel free to drop them down in the comment section. For now, we say enjoy the rest of your day and have yourself a beautiful weekend. Goodbye.